I had to get knocked out in front of 300 people in my first ever Muay Thai fight with only 3 months of training experience, by the way, for me to come to the simple realization that I actually have the power to make an impact in my life. I actually can stand up for myself. I actually can fight back. Metaphorically, that is, right? Because my whole life, you guys, I accepted my role as other people's doormats. I accepted my role as the bully's victim. You know, I was bullied from a really young age from my own family members, alongside like my peers as well, right? Because the dynamics I had at home directly translated into my self confidence, how I viewed myself, and how I carried myself at school, et cetera, right? Not to mention the fact that like I also moved schools quite a bit. I went to an Arabic school at the age of 4, a German school at the age of 6, and British school at the age of 9, and then an American school at the age of 10. It's like so many shifts, right? And then just like a lack of stability at home with just like really toxic and poor family dynamics where, yeah, I'm gonna give away like a lot of details here, but like that was definitely an accident. My dad certainly was not happy to have me around, and yeah, there's a lot of you know issues that he had that are completely unresolved, perhaps even unresolved until this day, that he would take out on me, right? Guys, add the fact that like both of my families come from war-torn families, right? My dad's from Palestine, so you already know what kind of issues are going on over there. And then my mom is from France, where my granddad was going through the Second World War in Nazi-occupied France. So there's a lot of unresolved mental issues in my family, and growing up, it was like a concoction of both of those dynamics where there was just a lot of insecurity and a lot of personal unresolved traumas. Add the fact that here I am, I show up as an accident, have this baby you got to take care of. And now people are pissed, people are stressed. There's just a whole lot of unresolved bullshit. A lot of it was taken out on me. And that kind of summarizes my childhood in a pretty good way, because I had to accept my role as the victim. And perhaps that's the wrong way of framing it, right? Perhaps it's just I reacted how I naturally did with the dynamics that I was in. Because rather than fighting back for myself, rather than taking life by the balls and saying, well, I'm not going to accept this kind of treatment, I guess, like, from a very young age, and I hate to blame external circumstances, right? But just the fact of the matter is that, like, from a very young age, I was taught to just shut up and take it. And I could tell that, like, throughout high school, that it's just, that kind of mentality wasn't really serving me. Even teachers were bullying me quite a bit. They thought that I was acting stupid, when in reality I just like barely spoke English at the age of 9 and 10, because I never learned English. You guys, again, I went to so many different schools, an Arabic and a German school, completely different cultures, completely different mindsets. I just felt lost, right? And add like a very low self-esteem and low self-belief and self-confidence, because I was never encouraged as a kid, right? It was just like this very weird dynamic that I was in, where I just submitted to the forces of life instead of fighting back for myself, right? So now we're going to jump forward to 20 years later, right? To the age of 26. I get fired. This is April 2023. I get fired from my corporate job. I decided to go down the corporate avenue because I submitted to the forces of life. I said, I'm not going to do anything that my heart and instinct tells me to do. I'm just going to go ahead and listen to what my dad tells me to do what my dad did, and go down this university and 9 to 5 life, which, ultimately was a mistake. It led me to kind of lose even more hope within myself, because, again, I was just when you have an employee's mindset, when you have this passive mindset of just like, yeah, I'm gonna take instructions from a boss, I'm gonna take instructions from upper management, I'm just going to sacrifice my own life direction for the shareholders. With that kind of a mindset, it kind of spirals you even more into the cycle of pain. And perhaps it was a blessing, due to the fact that it's a blessing, because, guys, I think I went so low in terms of life direction. Had things not been as bad emotionally for myself, then perhaps I wouldn't have come to the realization that I really wanted to break out of my life, circumstances. But essentially, I got fired, right? I was fired for the first time ever, not necessarily because I was performing poorly, even though I kind of was, but like the company was just very mismanaged and they had to lay off like half the company in Q1, half the company in Q2, and just they just kept doing more and more rounds of layoff. I was part of the third or second or whatever wave there was. And for the first time ever, my life wasn't about working anymore. For the first time ever, my life wasn't about giving up my own individuality for the benefit of somebody else. I actually was given the opportunity to take control of the driver's seat, right? And I never really experienced that before. I never felt that kind of freedom ever before. And Muay Thai was something that always really appealed to me, right? I don't know, just something about fighting. I guess subconsciously, I knew that it symbolized autonomy and agency, right? For you to fight back physically appealed to me perhaps because I never fought back, metaphorically in my life, right? So I booked a one-way trip to Thailand. I had a girlfriend at the time, and she, at the time, it was just a 1 month round trip. And I ended up extending it to 3 months, even a little bit more in total, because when I started training full time and I actually put my energy into something that benefited me and that improved me as a man and improved my confidence and my skill set in fighting, it was just like, what the fuck, like, especially the weather and just the tropical climates compared to the Montreal winters. It was just such an eye-opening experience. It was just so drastically different to what I was used to. So I extended it for a total of 3 months, and my girlfriend certainly wasn't happy with that. And I had to put that to the side. I had to say I can't keep pleasing other people. I got to do what my gut is telling me to do. And for the first time ever, I can finally see clearly that my gut is telling me to pursue Muay Thai, right? So at the end of the 3 months, guys, I kept asking for a fight. And the trainers were always just like, you're not ready, and clearly I wasn't. I was a total beginner. And after insisting long enough, they finally gave me the fight. And I show up at the stadium, and my opponent has 100 fights. It ended up being an opponent switch at the last minute, and I end up having like not a mini, it's a meltdown, a mental meltdown where I'm just like, I felt like a sacrificial lamb going into that fight, right? My 0 fights, my first ever fight experience after only 3 months of training against somebody with 100 fights. Because when we showed up at the stadium, my friend saw the fight card and was just like, I know your opponent, that's the guy who beat Hakeem, our European champion. So, to say that it was a stressful moment is a total understatement, but in that moment, I had the chance to view the stress a little bit differently, right? Because I kind of have been going through a chronic stress my whole life with the 9 to 5 job and just like doing what other people are telling me to do, what family pressures and societal pressures are telling me to do. Whereas here, it was a different kind of stress. It was, I'm now faced with the opportunity to fight. And I can feel fight or flight for the first time ever, and for the first time ever, I don't feel freeze, right? Because my reaction for the most part was always just to freeze in stressful situations, which is how, I went down the rabbit hole of numbing my pain through my vices, like smoking cigarettes, like doing drugs, watching porn, etc., right? That's how I got into all these addictions. But here I am, faced with this adrenaline, this energy that is like, it's like elevating my frequency, but for the first time ever, it wasn't negative. I could tell it was an energy that was there to fuel me for something that is meaningful, for something that for a life path that I actually chose for myself, right? And I remember like distinctively, like maybe half an hour before the fight when I was warming up, I remember thinking like, okay, so I'm about to fight a guy with 100 fights, right? It's a total mismatch. I know I'm in some kind of trouble. I'm gonna get beat up here. This is gonna be a tough experience. But if I had the opportunity to back out right now, if my trainer was just like, okay, so this is gonna be a mismatch, Alex, if you want, you can just like pull out right now. Would you take that opportunity? And it was so evidently clear to me in that moment that the answer is fuck no. I absolutely will not back out right now because there's no way that I went through my whole life of just giving up on myself, of never fighting back, to now having the opportunity to do a real physical fight. I knew it was going to be a tough fight. I knew it was going to be a mismatch. I knew I was going to get hurt. But I have the opportunity to fight back regardless of how much of an underdog I am. And I went through, I got fired. I quit smoking after 10 years. Go to the rest of my YouTube and my Instagram if you don't know my story about smoking. I went through all of these internal battles that I had to overcome, right? And now I'm faced with a real physical battle. And what am I going to do? Am I just going to submit like I did for the majority of my life? Or am I actually going to take this opportunity to fucking fight back? And so I did. I ended up stepping in the ring. I ended up losing the fight by round 2 TKO. And even though I lost that fight, it was one of the most powerful, eye-opening experiences for me because I recognized that regardless of how much of an underdog I was, I had the power to fight back, and I did. I did hit him with a few shots. I did hurt him. Even though it wasn't enough to hurt him to win the fight or to finish him, I still fought back. Regardless of the fact that I had 0 fights and he had 100. And so reflecting on the experience afterwards completely changed my self-confidence and my state of mind because I could never go back to accepting defeat right off the bat ever again. I had the nuts to fucking step in the ring against a scary opponent and to actually put my heart on the line and to fight my heart out. And it's changed my life perspective ever since. Now I always choose me over the benefit of other people. Now I refuse to ever get exploited. It doesn't matter how powerful the person that I'm dealing with is, I will always tell them to go fuck themselves because it's always me above anybody else.